dire responses, and I'm just doing what I need to do to protect my community and the assets of the city of Del Rio, Texas. I did speak with the governor before we started speaking here, and so he's willing and ready to provide including TxDOT resources, DPS resources, and the like. And we're going to be working in tandem with our county officials as well to ensure that those assets are accurately and adequately presented and fortified along the port. So I did touch base on what I was going to be doing next. I'm doing the emergency local disaster declaration in the city of Del Rio, Texas. A declaration ordered by the mayor of the city of Del Rio declaring an emergency and disaster to assist with securing the international border of the city due to the ongoing immigration influx and associated issues in the city of Del Rio, Texas. Whereas securing the international border is important to the city to preserve the public health and safety of its residents. Whereas in 2021 alone, the governor of Texas has deployed thousands of troopers from the Texas Department of Public Safety and hundreds of soldiers from the Texas National Guard to provide assistance with patrolling and securing the border. Whereas beginning on or about September 10th, 2021, there have been thousands of migrants crossing the border and habituating on city property based in the backlog of immigration processing by U.S. Border Patrol. And there are likely thousands more who are traveling to Del Rio through Mexico in the coming days and weeks. Whereas there are significant health and safety issues to the resident of Del Rio and the migrants with the influx of migrants on city property. Whereas there are numerous reports of farmers, ranchers, and other Texans suffering property damage as a result of the increase in unlawful crossings, including damage to crops, livestock, ranch fences, and homes in Valverde County and the city of Del Rio. And whereas the public health and safety of the residents of the city of Del Rio under an imminent threat of disaster from an elevated risk of exposure to unknown variants of COVID-19 resulting from the human trafficking occurring on our border with Mexico, the limited resources of the city cannot adequately furnish the necessary procedures and facilities set forth by the Center for Disease Control and Prevention for the testing and quarantining of thousands of immigrants who may be infected areas of COVID-19 or other infectious diseases that residents have not been vaccinated for. Whereas the legislature has, in section 418.0041, defined a disaster as the occurrence or imminent threat of widespread or severe damage, injury, or loss of life or property resulting from any natural or man-made cause. Whereas under Texas law, declaring a disaster allows the use of all available state and local resources needed to manage the situation, activates the State Emergency Management Plan, and empowers the Texas Division of Emergency Management to reassign and fully utilize appropriate personnel where they are needed most. And whereas declaring a disaster also allows the state of Texas and the city of Del Rio to request federal funding for costs related to the disaster and begin accounting for costs that can be made part of it is in the best interest of its citizens to declare a local disaster to account for costs and has determined the extraordinary measures must be taken to ensure the protection of the health, safety, and welfare of city residents due to migrant influx. Pursuant to the Texas Disaster Act of 1975, the mayor is designated as the Emergency Management Director of the City of Del Rio and may exercise the powers granted to the governor and an appropriate local scale, and the City Council may also authorize disaster and extensions of same, whereas the City of Del Rio will work collaboratively with the U.S. Customs and Border Patrol, Department of Homeland Security, Valverde County, and the state of Texas to ensure that necessary measures manage and protect the residents of Del Rio and the migrant influx. Whereas by this declaration of disaster, the City of Del Rio does hereby declare all rules and regulations that may inhibit or prevent prompt response to this threat suspended for the duration of the incident. And whereas pursuant to the authority granted to the mayor under the Texas Declaration Act of 1975, the City of Del Rio does hereby authorize the use of all available resources of state and political subdivisions to assist in the city's response to the situation. Whereas Bruno Lozano, the mayor of the City of Del Rio, Texas, has determined that extraordinary and immediate measures must be taken to respond quickly to ensure and deter the influx of border crossings and devote additional city resources towards deterring the influx of migrant border crossings to protect our border community. Now, therefore, it is declared by the mayor of the city of Del Rio, Texas, Section 1, the recitals contained in the preamble are hereby found to be true, and such recitals are hereby made a part of this emergency declaration for all purposes and are adopted as part of the judgment and findings by the mayor. Section 2, that the mayor finds that a local state of disaster has been identified based on the migrant influx for the city of Del Rio pursuant to 418.108 of the Texas Government Code shall hereby declared, ordered, and authorized until September 24th pursuant to 418.108 of the Government Code. Section 3, pursuant to 418.108 the Government Code, this declaration of a local state of disaster shall be given prompt and general publicity and shall be filed promptly with the city secretary, including all publications necessary as required by law. Section 4, pursuant to 418.108D of the Government Code, this declaration of a local state of disaster activates the City Del Rio's participation in any city, county, or state emergency management plan. Section 5, pursuant to 418.020 of the Texas Government Code, the declaration authorizes the city to commander or use any private property, temporarily, by lease or other means. I'll hold on. Temporarily acquired, like it's like a war zone. Having been deployed in Kuwait, so any use of private property temporarily acquired by lease or other means, sites required for temporary housing units or emergency shelters subject to compensation requirements. Pursuant to Section 362.003 of the Texas Local Government Code, this local state of disaster is intended to authorize and does hereby declare that a state of civil emergency exists in the city of Del Rio, Texas, and requests the assistance of additional law enforcement to uphold the sovereignty and territorial integrity of the city. And Section 7, pursuant to Section 433.005 of the Texas Government Code, this local disaster is intended to request and does hereby request that the governor of Texas provide state forces to aid in controlling conditions in the city by assisting the city's law enforcement department in the enforcement of law and the preservation of sovereignty and territorial integrity of the city, as well as the assistance and cooperation of all appropriate federal administrative agencies for the preservation of city property. It is so ordered, authorized, and effective on the 17th day of September, 2021. We are now in a state of emergency regarding the migrant influx, and I'll take questions regarding this declaration.
I'm sorry to keep you in this.
No, you're great.
Okay. There are people, there's children.